A lot of people have asked me about my Wireshark profiles. They want to know about my color rules, filters, and how my pcaps load so fast. I share my profiles here in GitLab, and I normally have my profiles by protocol. Microsoft, TCP, TLS, Wi-Fi, because that way the columns and the protocol preferences are customized for that protocol. But what if you already have profiles for those protocols and you want my color rules and my filters, but not everything? Well, I've got you covered there. I have one folder that's called If You Only Want Certain Parts. I've standardized to a single set of color rules and filters. So I have color rules for both when I'm in light mode like I am now, and then for when I'm in dark mode. Then I have one for enabled protocols. That's my secret to get pcaps to open faster. And then one for my filter button groups. I'm going to go ahead and download all 4 of them. So I'll just pop up here to code and download the directory. Here they are, all nice and zipped up. But while Wireshark can go ahead and import a zipped directory with profile files in it, if you have multiple profiles like I just did, Wireshark's not going to be able to do it. I'm going to go ahead and extract these files. There we go. There's all my folders. These are all flat text files. That means I can go ahead and take my profile that I've created on a Mac and import it into Windows, or create one in Windows and import it into Linux, or take one in Linux and import it into my Mac. It's a beautiful circle. Profiles are completely operating system agnostic. So if you don't have a Mac, that's okay. You could still use my profiles. I'm just going to go ahead and double click on this file and open it in Notepad, just so you can see what type of information is in there. And it's going to lay out how the colors will look. Now I want to go ahead and import them into Wireshark. I'm over here in Wireshark, and I'm using a default profile. And this profile has not been modified in any way. It's exactly as it was when I first installed Wireshark on this virtual machine. So to import them, I just do a right click and say import from directory and browse through the folders that GitLab made. And I'm interested in color rules. And I'm going to bring in my color rules first. What I'm going to do is just get rid of all of the rules that are already there. So I'll click on one and hold down my shift, click on the last one and just delete them. And then I'm going to say copy from and my coloring rules. There. Now there's a method to the madness of my color rules. You do want to bear in mind that rules are processed in order until a match is found. So realize that where you put rules matter. So if I have one packet that could be colorized by 5 different rules, whichever one's in the list first, that's what it's going to be. It's just like an access control list. And I'll tell it okay. So now my default profile has been modified. I've got different colors for different protocols. Now, for me, red means troubleshooting. And I notice over here, I've got a couple red spots there in the packet map. So I can just jump right to them. So one was a reset, and then this one happens to be a retransmission. Also, the beauty of having the specific color rules is now I can go ahead in my frame section, open that up, and take the field coloring rule name and just drag and drop it there in front of info. And now I have a new column for coloring rule name. So I can see why it was colorized in a specific way. Or I could look at every single packet here in the detail area and look for that field, because that'd be a good time. Where's my sarcasm font when I need it? I am going to go ahead and align center just because I really like to have things centered. Personal preference. You do you. But this way, now that I have the coloring rule name, if I want to go ahead and filter for a specific color rule, I can just drag and drop it. And now all the packets that have that coloring rule show through my filter. Now, I lucked out. I happen to have exactly the packet right in front of me that I wanted, but that never happens in real life. So if I had wanted to filter for something specific and I know I have a color rule for it, all I have to do is go in the menu bar and go to View, back down to Coloring Rules, And I can tell from the name that I have some SIP traffic in here. So let's see if I have any SIP status codes that are greater or equal to 400, but less than 500. In other words, client errors. So I'll click on that one and apply it as a filter. There we go. I knew I had some of those. But what about the dark mode colors? Well, I'm running 4.6.1, and starting in 4.6, you could actually toggle to dark mode within Wireshark. Now, of course, I could just take Windows and put in dark mode, and then Wireshark would be in dark mode too, along with everything else. But let's just say for Wireshark purposes, I want to be in dark mode. So all I have to do, and this will be something that's part of my profile. So I go into Edit and Preferences and Font and Colors and Color Scheme, and I can change it from the system default, which means as soon as that sun goes down, it's going to flip by itself, to go ahead and say, I want it dark mode all the time. I'll tell it okay. Well, it looks great down here in the detail pane and in the packet bytes pane, but up here, it's like I still have that bright white background, which is not really what you want if you're doing dark mode. Well, remember, I had 2 profiles for color rules. Instead of right-clicking on profile and importing it from there like I did last time, this time I'll just go ahead and say Edit and Configuration Profiles. There we are. And Import from a directory. Now, if I had a brain before I started this, I would have zipped up all 4 of these folders and then just pulled it in with a zip file. We'll try that with the next 2. I highlight dark colors and select the folder, and it imported the profile. Perfect. Tell it okay. Yeah, then that look nice. But when you look at the coloring rules for the dark mode, though, they're the same rules. They're just optimized for dark mode. Yeah, this time I'm going to think ahead and zip those 2 folders that I really want together. I'm going to take Enabled Protocols and Filter Button Groups and just zip them together. Let's go ahead and import both of those profiles at once. So I'll come back to Wireshark and go to Edit and Configuration Profiles down there almost at the bottom, and import from a zip file. Now you might be thinking to yourself, hey Betty, why didn't you just go ahead and import the zip file you downloaded in the first place? Problem is, there's all these folders underneath, none of which are containing profile. So if I keep digging down, now I'm actually in the folders that have profiles. So the issue is there was just too many folders above it, nested in that original zip file. And Wireshark doesn't want to go ahead and work with that. So that's why I had to go ahead and come all the way down to the profile folders and zip them. All right, but there's my zip file. I'll tell Wireshark to open that. And 2 profiles imported. I wish I'd thought of that when I did the dark mode colors, but live and learn, and I can tell it okay. I'm going to keep working with my default profile. I'm going to come on back to default. It stayed in dark mode, so I want to go ahead and switch it back because I'm actually not a dark mode fan. Don't come after me in the comments. Everybody gets to have their profile however they want. That's the whole reason I'm showing you why I do certain things. I'm going to come back down to Edit and Preferences, and let's change font and colors back to the system mode or system default. There we go. Until it okay. Oh yeah, that's better. It's easier on my eyes, which is ironic considering most people my age think that dark mode is easier on their eyes. I've imported the color rules and added them to default, but now I want to go ahead and add my filter button. I just go into Edit and Preferences and Filter Buttons. Now, by default, it doesn't come with any filter buttons. I have a lot of filter buttons. Life is short. I don't want to look at any packet that I don't have to. Same thing, copy from. I'll drop that down, and there are my filter button groups. Not only do I go ahead and make these filters because I need them, but I also put in comment, and that way you get an idea of what is that filter for. Let me go ahead and just make this a little wider so we can see more at once. I've got my button labels. And then the filter expression, what's the syntax for the filter? And then what's the comment? Some of these just simply have a label, but some of them are a little special. Any of these that have 2 forward slashes, those forward slashes allow you to nest filters. Let's see how that works. You'll notice for some of my filters, I nest, and some of them I nest some more. Here, let's make that a little wider so you can see the whole thing. So I nest even a little bit more. Every time you see the 2 forward slashes, those filters are going to nest. Go ahead and tell it okay. Now I've started a series for my display filters, showing what each one is going to do and what the use case is for it. I'll link that in the upper right-hand corner. But now you can kind of see the little teeny tiny triangle. The ones that have numbers are layers for the OSI model. That's how I grouped them. For example, under layer 3, I have IP, and then under that, I have different filters, and then under that, I have even some more nested filters. And if you hover on any of them, it'll list the syntax and any comments, if I have comments in there. Let's see if I have any comments for some of these. There we go. Comments. Now I can use those filters to speed up analyzing the pcap. Let's talk about being able to open a file a little faster. So I'm going to go back to Edit and Preferences, and then there in the layout, I'm going to just check Show File Load Time. And that's going to be something specific to this profile, and tell it okay. There, and it'll reprocess the packets. Only took like 1.5 seconds. Not too bad. If I go ahead and try to load bigger file, suddenly it gets a little ugly. I'm going to do a file open here, and I have another file, and it's 2 gig. It's going to take a little longer to go ahead and open this file. I don't want you to think that that load time is just making up numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and pop back over here to Firefox, and I'm going to start my stopwatch. And we'll go ahead and open that file. Now, it's going to take a little bit to open, and I'm not going to force you to go ahead and watch it. I'm going to speed this up, but realize I'm doing that post-production. I am not doing this while it's opening. Okay, 34 seconds. Still not too bad. The larger the file and more conversations or Wireshark streams in the file, the older your laptop and the less provisioned it is, the longer it takes to open a pcap. I'm going to go ahead and tell you the secret of my opening files faster. When Wireshark loads, it loads all 3,000 protocol dissector files. And every time you add any type of filter, I'm going to go under General, and I'm going to filter for web traffic. Yeah. It has to reparse the entire file. So it's looking for anything with UDP port 80, 8080, 8088, 443, 8443, or TCP port, the same port numbers. That took a little while. Start my timer again, and every time I want to go to statistics, and let's say I want to go to conversations, because that's something I do with almost every pcap I open. Well, it's got to load all those. So a secret is you don't have to have all of the dissectors loaded. You really only need the ones that are most common in the pcaps that you look at. For example, if I go to Analyze and Enabled Protocols, every single one of those 3,000 are turned on. I mean, it just goes on forever, which is awesome. Somebody took the time to write all of these dissectors, which is amazing. But I don't necessarily need all of them. For example, I don't ever look at a Bluetooth pcap. But if I go ahead and do a search for Bluetooth, that's a lot of dissectors that I don't really need to load. Here, cancel out of that. What I like to have is a profile with only the protocols enabled that I need. I'm going to flip to Enabled Protocols. It opened quite a bit faster. And remember, the larger the file and the more conversations within the file, the more this matters. So what protocols do I have left on? If I go to Analyze and Enable Protocols, here I'm just going to change to the ones that are on. I still have quite a few that are on, but not all of them. I haven't counted, but it's maybe 200 are the ones that I look at the most. I look at a lot of different type of pcap files when I'm working with a customer or when I'm creating labs for my classes. But if I'm looking at a file that's 10, 15, 20 gigs or more, then this becomes very important. And I only want to load the protocol that I absolutely have to. For my quick load profiles, I have them by layer. So in my quick load layer 2, I have things like Ethernet, ARP, and Linux cooked mode for when you're capturing actually on a Linux box and you're combining interfaces. We could talk about why you should not do that, but that would be another video. And then for my layer 3, I keep the ones that I already have on, and then I add more for layer 3, just the big ones. IP, IP6, ICMP. Same thing for layer 4. Now I just added TCP and UDP. And the reason I do this is because now I can load that file even faster, and I can filter this large file, export that as a smaller file. I call that packet scraping. Save that as a smaller file, then open the new file, and then use whatever profile I want. Let's try that with quick load layer 3. I'll just download that one, extract it, and then import it into Wireshark. Remember, it took 28 seconds with my smaller set of enabled protocols. Now it took 7 seconds to load that 2.5 gig pcap. The smaller the number of protocols, the faster it goes. And the larger the file, the more important that is. But now if I go ahead and do any of my filters, so for example, an IP, maybe I'm only interested when private IP addresses talk to private IP addresses. I just want to see east-west traffic. And that only took 10 seconds. So not only is it loading the file the first time faster, but now every single thing that you do is faster. Just a little tip from your Aunt Betty. I make profiles for my use cases and workflow. Yours may be completely different, but if you find these helpful, just look at the date on the folder and you'll be able to see when have I updated them. Until next time, I'm Betty DuBois. Welcome to the Art of Packet Analysis.